let's just take a moment. Let's take a moment together to think about where we were last year when we heard the terrible news. Think back to how you felt, that sickness in your heart, the fear you felt knowing how much everything was about to change. I was in Scranton, Pennsylvania, where I live, and the phone rang, and it was my daughter who told me the news, and I could not believe it. And it just stuck in my heart. It had happened. Roe was overturned. We were devastated, and I'm sure many of you can relate. In the weeks and months that followed, we watched as red states across the country launched increasingly restrictive measures against reproductive care. We heard stories about women who were denied DNCs after suffering a miscarriage, even though their own health was at risk. We learned that women now faced criminal charges in states with strict anti-abortion laws. We saw how Roe being overturned could affect IVF, egg freezing, and more, and we knew we were at a critical turning point. And that's when a deeply wonderful thing happened. Women across the country came together. We felt our hearts break, we grieved, and we realized something. As my mother told me, you cannot wring your hands and roll up your sleeves at the same time. So in the White House, President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris immediately got to work with congressional Democrats to protect abortion at the federal level. In cities and towns throughout the country, people started registering to vote to make sure abortion rights were protected in their states. At the DNC, we were organized and ready too. Ahead of the midterms, we made sure that voters knew how the Biden administration was protecting reproductive freedoms. And what we saw was this. People support Democratic candidates because they know that the Democratic Party is the only party protecting reproductive freedoms. We are the only party taking action. It's sad, but it's the truth. As a result of these collective efforts, one of the most successful midterm elections in history happened. And now, together, we're going to build on that. We're going to make sure that we're even more successful in 2024 elections. So 1 year after Dobbs, there's too much at stake for us to do nothing but wring our hands. You know, my husband Bob and I have 6 children. A few months before Roe was overturned, my oldest daughter Grace and her husband told us they were expecting their 4th child. And as you can imagine, we were overjoyed. Sadly, over halfway into her pregnancy, Grace suffered a late-term miscarriage and had to have a stillborn delivery. I asked Grace if I could share a little bit of her story, and she said that during that experience, she was never more aware of how where you live can determine how you're treated. Because my daughter lives in Pennsylvania with strong Democratic congresswomen and a Democratic governor and 2 United States senators who have vowed to protect reproductive health, she was treated with sympathy and compassion. Thank you. But tragically, many women across America aren't as fortunate and are treated with suspicion and cruelty. The president has said that with a Democratic majority, he will codify Roe. And he will make reproductive health care the law of the land. The good news is that's what we're gathered here to do. Roll up our sleeves and make sure that happens. Today, I'm proud to be with some of our country's strongest defenders of reproductive care. And wow, what a team it is. President Joseph Biden, First Lady Dr. Jill Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris, and Second Gentleman Doug Emhoff. Together with the DNC, Emily's List, President LaFonza Butler, Naral Pro-Choice America President Minnie Tamaraju, and Planned Parenthood Action Fund President, CEO Alexis McGill Johnson. They are leading the way to change, to protect reproductive rights, and you get to hear from them in just a few moments. But I don't know about you. I'm ready and I'm fired up. Because let's be clear, this is what we are here to do. We're going to take back the House and expand our gains in the Senate. We're going to keep President Biden and Vice President Harris in the White House. We're going to codify Roe and protect reproductive health. And we are going to help this incredible administration finish the job. Are you ready to roll your sleeves up and get to work? I am too. Thank you.
Please welcome Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi.
I guess we stand here. Hello, everyone. This is a day, right? Well, Virginia, thank you for your rousing remarks and your commitment to the good health of America's women. But in addition to that, for the generosity of spirit of sharing your daughter's story. Because when we're talking about this, we're talking about not only choice being on the ballot, but health being on the ballot, lives being on the ballot. So Virginia posed in her opening remarks, we all remember where we were when we got the news. Well, I know where I was. I was in Colorado having a shall we say, political event with my colleagues there. And as soon as we heard, I said to Diana DeGette, who is the co-chair of our pro-choice caucus in the Congress, she along with Barbara Lee are the co-chairs. I said, Diana, can you believe this? And I said, I'm going from here to Texas. Imagine I was going to Texas the next day, to Texas. And I said, I just want to be sure that we're all on board for us to introduce Judy Chu's legislation to protect a woman's right to choose tomorrow morning, first thing. First thing. So when this was happening, it was startling, it was heartbreaking, it was what? But we were ready. Judy Chu had introduced that legislation, I don't know how many times since about 2013. We were ready to inoculate against their poisonous actions. And but now here we are today. We don't agonize, we organize. And I see some friends here, we unionize. So here's what happened this morning. This morning and this week we've had press events this morning led by Hakeem Jeffries, our wonderful leader in the House. Catherine Clark, Pete Aguilar, so many members gathered together with our pro-choice co-chairs, Diana DeGette, as I mentioned, and Barbara Lee, and Judy Chu, so that Judy could announce that in 2 days, in our discharge petition, we have 211 co-sponsors, 211 people. So what that means, we'll call them co-sponsors, signatories. Our response now, since we don't have the House, is that we can have a discharge petition. What that means is we need 7 Republicans, of the twice that number at least, who have won in Biden districts, to sign up for a discharge petition so that we can discharge that bill. Now, some of the people who are here that signed on to that, Chrissy Houlihan was acknowledged from Pennsylvania, Debbie Wasserman Schultz from Florida, Sarah Jacobs from Florida, Hillary Scholten from Michigan, Emily Sykes, Ohio, Andrea Salinas. I'll just read their names without the state. I'll go past it. Brendan Boyle, another Pennsylvanian, Kim Schreier, Melanie Stanbury, and I said Chrissy Houlihan again. Any others back there came in since I was? Oh, here we are. Diana DeGette's here. I just mentioned Diana. Garcia, Congressman Garcia from Texas. So, Diana, I was mentioning our conversation as soon as we heard it that night in Colorado. Get on the plane, go to Texas. In Texas, the women were on fire. Now, this is the first light of day that we're seeing after this dark decision. The women were loaded for bear. In fact, they had one of their biggest events for us, no men allowed. We just had to have some girl talk. By the hundreds of people, girl talk in that way. But they were ready. So what we need are 7 more people to sign the discharge petition. But what we also need is a massive organization across the country. During this last year, during the election, people would say to me, "You're all wrong. You shouldn't be talking about Dobbs. That's in the rearview mirror. That's yesterday." I said, "You know what? Get away from me." I mean, these are fighting words for us, right? This is a mission that we are on. So we said, no, we know our districts. Our members know our districts. And we know that when we go in a district and make the contrast, your member of Congress does not support a woman's right to choose. Ours does. Our candidate does. Or the reverse if it's a candidate versus the incumbent. But let me just tell you this, because this is really, nothing should be shocking around here, but when we passed Judy Chu's bill, guess how many Republicans voted for it? 0. Okay, you got it right. To ensure a woman's right to travel for reproductive care. 3. And to guarantee, now this one you would think, if you hate terminating a pregnancy, you want to avoid that, you should give women access to contraception. 8. But think of all the ones who voted against this. Make no mistake, they're out to have a national ban on abortion, overturning Roe v. Wade. We must prevail. Now, I don't say this as a threat, but we have to let people know there are consequences to their actions. They told us we were going to lose 30, 40 seats. Remember that? Maybe 50. Because we had the wrong message. We were talking about a woman's right to choose, which is freedom and a democracy. And we were talking about gun violence protection. So we said, you may know what you know sitting on your butt in some studio, but we know what's going on in our districts. And what did we lose? 5 in New York, and we'll get them back. We lost 1 in California. We'll get that back. So we're ready to win. But in order for this to work, we need, again, not agonizing, organizing, the best possible mobilization so that these members know there is a price to pay for insulting the women, for disrespecting women and their right to their health care. And there's a price to pay. And I don't say that as a threat. I say it as a prediction. So, are you ready for us to have a strong victory for the House of Representatives and make Hakeem Jeffries the next Speaker of the House? Catherine Clark, the Democratic Majority Leader, and then the Majority Whip, and the list goes on. And it's going to be wonderful. But in addition to that, we have to pick up a couple of seats in the United States Senate. We have to be able to pull back the curtain of filibuster so that we only need 51 votes to do that. 51 votes who are willing to do that. And then we can pass the bill with 51 votes. And I have to worry about 60 votes. And then, most important of all, because it's not just about the presidency and the vice presidency, it's about the court system. It's about the spirit of America. It's about everything. so much, has such an impact on how we are viewed in the world, what it means, the kitchen table issues of America's working families, and what it means in terms of preserving the planet for future generations, gun violence protection for our children. So many subjects that you can name. So many subjects that you can name. So important that we give a rousing re-election to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris as President and Vice President of the United States. Are we ready for that? I thought so. Now, if any members have come in since who have already signed the discharge petition, which is every Democrat except one, anybody want to, that maybe you weren't acknowledged before, speaking this few minutes? I have to leave as soon as the president finishes because I'm getting on the plane going to San Francisco. And when I land, it'll be just dark enough for me to flip the switch, thank you, just dark enough for me to flip the switch to have the Bay Bridge lit up in gay pride colors for Gay Pride Week. It has to be dark enough. But in any event, let's thank Emily's List. That's, oh my gosh, the Pro-Choice America of Naral, Emily's List, Planned Parenthood for America, they and all of you. Just remember this. There's nothing more important to a member of Congress or any elected official than the voice of his or her own constituents. So make sure they're hearing from their constituents, because their constituents are their bosses, and their constituents are the people who vote for us. That's all they're interested in. They're not interested in people calling from here and there. That's important for getting out the vote. But when we want to deliver the message, I want to know where you stand in terms of my health, my life, really, and very importantly, that of our children. So thank you all. And by the way, I saw Reese and Evie. Now, there are many young people here, and that's a beautiful thing. But they're the youngest, and it's all about the children for the future. We're ready for a great Democratic victory. Thank you all so much. Thank you.
Please welcome a message from President and CEO of Planned Parenthood Action Fund, Alexis McGill Johnson.
Hello, I'm Alexis McGill Johnson, President and CEO of Planned Parenthood Action Fund. I am so sorry I couldn't be there in person with you all today, but I am so honored to virtually stand with Emily's List and Naral and announce the Action Fund's endorsement of Joe Biden for president in 2024. President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris have been steadfast in their commitment to protect and expand access to sexual and reproductive health care. Tomorrow marks 1 year since the Supreme Court took away our ability, our power to control our own bodies and gave it to the states. In the past year, 20 states have passed abortion bans. That means 1 out of 3 women plus more trans and non-binary people can no longer access abortion care in their home state. But through it all, President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris have been fierce champions for reproductive freedom. I am so proud of the bold actions that this administration has taken to protect patients and to protect providers, to give them accurate information and to let them know they are not alone, that there are people in positions of power that are fighting for them. This is what leadership looks like. Leaders meet moments of uncertainty with boldness and clarity. But we know there's more work to be done. The opposition has made it clear that returning the question of abortion to the states was never enough. They want a national abortion ban. They're coming for even more rights and freedoms. Instead of focusing our country on issues that will move us forward, the opposition is taking us back. Americans should not be held back by hostile forces. They should be lifted up by hope and possibility. Americans need leaders who will stand up and fight for them. Americans need Joe Biden and Kamala Harris back in the White House. Planned Parenthood Action Fund will do everything we can to keep Joe Biden and Kamala Harris where they belong. We know that by working together, we can achieve a world where all people can access reproductive health care, no matter who they are or where they live. Thank you, President Biden. Thank you, Vice President Harris, for your incredible partnership and your incredible leadership. I will see you on the campaign trail.
Please welcome President of Naral Pro-Choice America, Minnie Timaraju.
Hello. So wonderful to be with you today. I'm Minnie Timaraju. I'm the president of Naral Pro-Choice America. And thank you. Go Naral. I know you're here. And our 4 million members, thank you for joining us tonight. I want to start by thanking all of the abortion rights, health and justice advocates and providers who are here with us. It's been a horrific year, and you have gone above and beyond to provide life-saving care to our communities in the toughest circumstances. In the wake of this crisis, we stand here today with the most pro-choice, pro-reproductive freedom administration in the history of our nation. And that's exactly what we need in this post-Roe America, because we've never faced a time quite like this. We are in a state of emergency. Abortion access is being decimated by extremists. In 20 states, abortion is either entirely banned or severely restricted. Our research at Naral shows that since Roe was overturned 1 year ago, 20 million women of reproductive age have either lost access to legal abortion entirely or face new restrictions so extreme that they've made it nearly impossible to access the essential care that they need. That is why we are making our earliest ever endorsement in a presidential campaign for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. We know that the president and the vice president are committed to restoring the federal right to abortion, and they are not afraid to do hard things. They've done work to protect and restore our rights, from executive actions, including the one today on contraception, defending our reproductive freedom, and championing the Women's Health Protection Act. They've directed the Justice Department to defend reproductive freedom in the courts. They've nominated and confirmed a record-setting number of fair-minded, qualified judges who believe in our freedoms, including thank you, Heather, including Associate Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. That's why we're all here today. That's why our organizations are uniting once again to make this historic endorsement and kickoff for our campaign now. And from one president to another, I've got to say, this is a big effing deal. In 22 states, plus the District of Columbia right here, we have pro-reproductive freedom majorities in power who are codifying our rights into law. This is what happens when we elect pro-reproductive freedom majorities, right? So we got to finish the job. These changes are happening because abortion matters in the everyday lives of everyday people. Poll after poll, including polling just this week, shows that a majority of Americans support abortion rights and oppose abortion bans. This includes, and this is really important, an increasing number of independents and Republicans. Support for abortion access is at a record high, which means we have a moral obligation to engage these Americans in 2024 to deliver critical wins for our communities to restore and expand abortion access. We have, wait for it, 15 months. 15 months to make sure every voter in the United States knows that it is Joe Biden and Kamala Harris who've had their backs for the last 4 years and will for the next 4 too. We have 15 months to do the work that will make sure we take back the House and win a commanding majority in the Senate, so we aren't asked to compromise on what the vast majority of Americans deserve. We have 15 months, y'all. But the good news is we have the majority. And we are the majority. So say it with me one more time. We are the majority. We are the majority. We are the majority. Let's finish the job. Thanks.
Please welcome President of Emily's List, LaFonza Butler.
Good afternoon. I'm the labor leader, so I get to say that one more time. Good afternoon. I love the sound of people's voice. Can we give our Speaker Emerita, Nancy Pelosi, one more round of applause? How incredible it is to have a leader like Leader Nancy Pelosi to stay in the fight with all of us as we are in the fight for our very lives. And so I'm so grateful to have the members of Congress, all of the Emily's List endorsed members of Congress who are here. So grateful and glad to be here with all of you today. As was noted, I am LaFonza Butler, president of Emily's List, the nation's largest political resource for women in politics. Make that Democratic pro-choice women in politics. It's not news to anyone in this room that we are in a fight for our freedom. Every day we hear about Republicans who have found more and more cruel ways to roll back our rights. In states across the country, they are working overtime to make it harder for us to make our own health care decisions and determine our own future. But we know that Americans across this country want these rights themselves, want these decisions to be our own and not our government. And we believe that voters deserve leaders who will not only respect their choices, but they want leaders who are going to fight to protect their rights. Leaders like President Biden and Vice President Harris. Friends, when the Dobbs decision ended a constitutional right for the first time in this country's history, we were grateful that these were the leaders who were on guard. Leaders who've been vocal advocates for abortion rights across the government and across the country, from fighting in the court to working across agencies and offering a budget that would protect abortion rights for everyone. This is the most pro-choice administration we've ever seen. And we gather here a year after the Dobbs decision. And I'm reminded, you probably have heard me refer to this, but I continue to be reminded of the words of Zora Neale Hurston, who wrote for all of our consideration that there are years that ask questions and years that answer. Democrats, I am of the opinion that the last set of years have posed some big questions for us. Like, what are we going to do? And where were we when our rights were being taken away? What are we going to do, and where were we when our children's future were being put in danger? These questions have been put before us, and Democrats, I am convinced that the next few years in front of us are the years that we will answer. Because the answer truly is clear. The difference could not be more stark. Emily's List was created because we believe that who you elect matters. And that starts at the top. That's why we are proud to support the re-election of this dedicated, hard-working ticket. We'll be working hard to ensure that President Biden and Vice President Harris get to finish the job on important issues facing our country that they have been working so hard on. And it is most important for me as the president of Emily's List to be able to say that we are thrilled to endorse Kamala Harris, the highest ranking woman ever elected in this country, as vice president in this nation. Look, friends, I want to end my remarks here quickly, but it is important to me as the leader of an organization that values representation and has focused for 38 years on electing pro-choice women. I know how much it matters for my daughter and for America's daughters to be able to see Vice President Harris at the decision-making table. We know that she takes us in every room she enters. We know she makes us proud in every room she goes. We have seen the Vice President lifting the voices and issues that have not always been addressed in the highest reaches of power in this country. She is a brilliant and qualified Emily's List endorsed candidate from the time she was running for district attorney in San Francisco to now as vice president of these United States. And we are incredibly proud. We are incredibly proud to see her as a partner to President Joe Biden and to see what great work they will continue to do to fight for the freedoms of our children and the generations ahead of us. Thank you all for coming and for the work that I know you will continue to do.
welcome Jill Biden and Douglas Emhoff.
Hello, everyone. Woo! We're back. It's great to see everyone. Let's hear it for our amazing speakers. If you heard clapping backstage, that was us. So much energy in this room, all the leaders, all the activists, all the elected officials. Thank you for having me and letting me say a few words. It means a lot. And I've seen you all out there. I've seen you out all around the country fighting for all of us, fighting for our rights. So I see it. We all see it. But let's just go back a year. I remember where I was, but I also still remember how I felt. And I'm still angry a year later. But I could remember it. I was here in D.C. My wife, the Vice President, Kamala Harris. It still never gets old saying that. But she was on Air Force 2 traveling to an event, and the news hit, so she was able to see it. And she called me within seconds. And it was something like, Dougie, they actually did it. They actually did it. And then within minutes, our then 23-year-old daughter, Ella, texted me. And I hear from her when I want to hear from her, but this was one of these, Dad, you need to do something about this. And then within minutes after that, my 80-something-year-old mother, Barb, again, I don't hear from her unless I need to hear from her. It was like, honey, you need to do something about this. And think about that, a woman of that age, of that generation, and she was one of those women who was out there fighting and marching and fighting for the rights that have been just drastically ripped away, and that was my mother. And now think about it. All these years later, 23, now 24-year-old daughter somehow is going to have less rights than my 80-something-year-old mother. That cannot stand. That cannot stand. Thank you. So like I said, I'm still angry about this, but like all of us, we have to turn that anger into action. So for my part, this past year, I've written articles, I've traveled and spoken all over the country, a lot of times to young men, to get them activated, to know this is an issue for them. And I've worked with these three groups, and I worked with a lot of you talking about the important issue of abortion access and reproductive freedom. And just yesterday, I had, I have to say, a pretty painful group of conversations with medical providers. And hearing firsthand the horror stories that are now out in the news, but this is real life. And this has an absolute real life impact on women. And these stories are horrific. These draconian laws in these states that have no regard for women's health, let alone our fundamental rights, are literally affecting and sometimes fatally the health of the women of this country. And us men, this is an issue for us too, all of us, and that's why I think it's important to use my voice in this microphone to talk about this issue, that abortion access, reproductive freedom is an issue for all of us, men, women, everyone. Because it affects us and it affects our fundamental rights, and women cannot be less than. It's just the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do. So I could not be prouder to be part of this team led by our great President Biden, Vice President Harris. As you know, they are fighting for you each and every day for fundamental human rights and for the future of this country. And I get to see it firsthand They have your back. They have all of our backs. And speaking of a leader, a warrior for so many issues, and again, I get to see it firsthand, someone who stands up for human rights, for women's rights, the rights of women and girls all over the world, not just here. Our amazing First Lady, my good friend, Dr. Jill Biden.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you. I love you too. All the women out there with heels should just slip them off right now. You take them off. Take them off. Done. Because I've been watching from the backstage, seeing how long you're standing, and I said, "Are they all standing that long?" Yeah, slip them off. Slip them off. So, anyway, thank you. And as you said, this isn't just a women's issue, and we're never going to make the progress we need unless more men like you and like Joe are willing to speak up and get to work. So thank you, Doug, for your commitment on this. You're an amazing second gentleman, isn't he? Thank you. So, good afternoon. I grew up before Roe v. Wade, and abortion was something that really we only whispered about, and it was shrouded in secrecy and shame. And in that silence, so much was lost: security and dignity, dreams, and even lives. Roe changed so much. But a lot of people didn't want to talk about this issue. Maybe, I don't know, maybe they thought it was too political. Maybe they didn't think we needed to, because after all, Roe was the law of the land. But you, the advocates, have never been silent. You've worked tirelessly long before we lost Roe to protect women and strengthen the right to choose. Thank you for your work. Today, we find ourselves refighting the battles of the past, and it's heartbreaking. And yes, we knew that there would be devastating consequences from this decision. But knowing still couldn't prepare me from what I heard a group of courageous women who shared their stories at the White House this week. Maybe you saw it. It was Elizabeth, Anya, Nancy, Austin. They came from different backgrounds and states: Florida, Texas, Louisiana. However, the details of their experiences were similar. They wanted these pregnancies. There was crib shopping and ultrasounds stuck to the fridge, and then a devastating diagnosis. Doctors who refused them care. Pain and humiliation and deadly infections. They described being told that they were in medical danger, but not enough to get the abortions they needed. They talked about being afraid to tell people what happened, of feeling like a criminal as they fled their home state to get care, how their spouses felt helpless, terrified for their families. They recalled their stories, if any of you saw it, with stone-like strength, poised, practiced. But then I would see a memory flash across their eyes, as if they were back in that bathroom, waiting for the worst, or praying that they'd make it to safety as they crossed the state line. Their voices would crack. They'd pause to fight back the tears. And we all waited in silence, grabbing a hand, breathing together through the pain. It was a sisterhood of survivors, not just of loss, but of a cruelty that made that loss so much worse. The women I spoke to didn't want to relive the worst moments of their lives, but they kept doing it. They tell their stories again and again, not for themselves, but for all of the women who can't. If they can raise their voices, how can we do any less? We won't. We won't. Women put Joe and Kamala in the White House, and we will do it again. Not just for ourselves, but for all of the women whose educations and careers and families were founded on the ability to choose when they have children. For the young women who will grow up in the world we're shaping for them right now. And for all the fathers and the brothers and the husbands and the sons who love them. My mom used to tell me, Jill, things will always look better in the morning. And she was right. We take it day by day, battle by battle. We don't lose hope, and we don't quit. We honor the struggle of the women who came before us, and we will find our courage for the ones who come next. We wake up each day in the bright light of morning and keep fighting for our future, knowing in our hearts that, yes, together we will win and send Joe and Kamala back to the White House. Thank you.
Please welcome the Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris.
Hi. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Oh, it's always so good for us to all be together. What a powerful, powerful group of true patriots, of true patriots, of true patriots. You know, because there's something that is so important about this fight that we are in. So fundamental. We are fighting on behalf of foundational principles. One of the most important principles upon which our nation was founded, the importance of freedom. Freedom. Freedom to make decisions about one's own life, one's own body. The freedom to be free from government interference when it comes to one's private decisions that are about heart and home. We are here because we love our country. We believe in these foundational principles. And we will always fight to achieve the ideals of our country. That's why we are here together. So I thank all the leaders who are here, including, of course, the most honorable members of the United States Congress, our extraordinary Speaker Emerita, Nancy Pelosi, a great woman, a great leader, the champion of our administration for women and families, Dr. Jill Biden. And of course, my husband, the first, second gentleman of the United States. So it really is a joy and an honor to be with a group of folks, leaders of so many movements, but in particularly the organizations that I've been proud to work with in my entire career. LaFonza mentioned it. I mean, I have received endorsements from these three organizations over the course of my career, and I do believe it is a function of the work that we have done together on so many issues that, again, are about freedom and about dignity and about autonomy and about the rights and the dignity to which all people are entitled. So I want to thank Emily's List, Planned Parenthood, and Naral for all that you are and all that you do. Emily's List, I mean, LaFonza Butler, how about that? She is extraordinary. And then, of course, Ellen Malcolm, who has just been a shining star in this movement for so long. And you know, as district attorney, as attorney general, I worked with Naral on so many issues, including our work to defeat an anti-choice ballot initiative and our work to protect health clinics and providers from violence. As a United States Senator, I worked with Planned Parenthood on critical legislation, including, I was a proud co-sponsor of the Women's Health Protection Act. And so there's a lot of work that we have done together, providing us with the roadmap of what we will do going forward. And for all of those reasons, today, President Biden and I are honored to accept the endorsement of these three organizations for 4 more years. Exactly. So, to get there, let's talk about the work. And let's take a moment to really reflect on the historic progress that we've made thus far. You know, so many of us are always in the process of fighting to achieve full equality, full freedom, the rights that people are fully entitled to. But let's always take a moment to also see what we have achieved thus far, while we clearly see the moment that we are presently in. So we have achieved a lot. And I know that in particular when the Dobbs decision came down, a lot of us, it hit us very hard. Doug talked about it. Jill has talked about it. We all know how we felt. It was painful. But let's also remember what we have achieved together to continue to provide us with the sustenance that we rightly deserve to know that we make a difference when we are in this fight. And let us center on this moment also. And I do believe this is a moment when we are seeing a national agenda, which is a full-on attack on so many of our hard-won rights and freedoms that we thought were long settled, but are now under attack. That's the moment we are in, including almost exactly 1 year ago when the United States Supreme Court, the Court of Thurgood, the Court of RBG, took a constitutional right that had been recognized from the people of America, from the women of America, took the right of every woman to make decisions about her own body. So tomorrow, many of us will be, and I invite you, I know we're going to be spread out all over the country, but I'll be in Charlotte, North Carolina, where I intend to describe the impact of the past 365 days on the health, the safety, and the well-being of the women of our nation. And the impact is clear. And a year later, it is also clear that extremists in Congress plan to ban abortion nationwide. Nationwide. But I have news for these extremists. As I look at all the friends and the leaders, the people of America will not accept that. Planned Parenthood will not accept that. Naral, pro-choice America will not accept that. Emily's List will not accept that. And you know President Biden and I will not accept that. And I do believe when you know what you stand for, you know what to fight for. We stand for the freedom of every American, including the freedom of every person, everywhere, to make decisions about their own body, their own health care, and their own doctors. So we fight for reproductive rights and legislation that restores the protections of Roe v. Wade. And here's the thing. The majority of Americans are with us. They agree. The majority of Americans are with us. From Kansas to California during the midterms, the evidence is clear. There's empirical evidence of this point. The majority of Americans agreed that an important attribute, and I believe this, the President and I were talking about it, the majority of Americans I know also believe that an important attribute of a true leader is the ability to have empathy. To truly have some curiosity, concern, and care for the struggles of other people. You know, there's something happening in our country right now where some people would suggest that the measure of strength is based on who you beat down. That's perverse. The true measure of strength is based on who you lift up. So as we move on, we know empathy is a true quality of a true leader. And that is the true Joe Biden, I might say. And Americans know that when we go forward on this issue, it is also a truth that one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree that the government should not be telling her what to do with her body. So Planned Parenthood, Naral, Emily's List, we stand and we fight for the women, for the people of America, and for the dedicated healthcare providers of America, providers like our next speaker, and I'm so proud to introduce her, an OBGYN who is on the front lines of this fight. Please welcome Dr. Serena Floyd, Medical Director for Planned Parenthood of Metropolitan Washington, D.C.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Serena Floyd. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm a board-certified OBGYN and an abortion provider. I decided over 20 years ago to become an OBGYN physician because of the meaningful impact I could have in others' lives. I became an abortion provider because I wanted to provide compassionate, non-judgmental care to those with an absolute right to make personal decisions about their health, about their bodies, and what is best for themselves and their families. I am angered and I am frustrated every day by opponents of sexual and reproductive health who believe it is their right to control the bodies, lives, and futures of millions. The egregious attacks on reproductive freedom that are sweeping this country directly impact not just those I care for, but all of us, whether you are a patient, a parent, a partner, a family member, a friend, an advocate, or a provider like me. That is why it has never been more critical for us to have leaders in positions of power who will protect our patients and our ability to do our jobs the way we have been trained to do them. Leaders with a fierce sense of determination and an indomitable resilience that those of us doing this work and our patients need and deserve. President Biden and Vice President Harris have been strong partners for us in the White House, and I am so grateful for their leadership. It is now my honor to introduce the President of the United States, Mr. Joe Biden.
Jill said you women should take off your high heels. The rest of you should lie down. My Lord, talk about commitment standing all this time. Thank you, Doc. I appreciate that introduction. I really do. My name is Joe Biden. I am Jill's husband and Kamala's running mate. Y'all think I'm kidding. I want to start by thanking Kamala for taking the lead on this issue and so many other issues in our campaign and our governing. And I want to thank Jill and Doug for their work shining a spotlight on the issue affecting women. And I want to thank all of you, Emily's List, Naral, Planned Parenthood, for your endorsement. It's a big deal. It's a big deal. Your support was critical last time around, and we're so grateful for it, and we're working hard for you again. I can't think of 3 organizations that will have more consequential impact on the right and the ability to regain freedom. You know, you have troops on the ground in every single state. And we're going to need all those troops in those states. We want to thank Nancy Pelosi, a good friend who's been an ally and friend of mine for a long time, as well as the many members of the Congress that are here, and elected officials from all around the country. To state the obvious, and it's clear by now, it's almost redundant to say it, this fight really matters. It really, really matters. Since the day the Dobbs decision came down, 1 year ago tomorrow, we've seen the devastating effects all across the country. Women turned away from emergency rooms, denied life-saving care. Moms, college students, teachers, nurses, traveling hundreds of miles to get basic reproductive health care. And we just heard from Jill, who's heard the stories firsthand. You know, we've all heard the stories firsthand. People come up to you, people we've known, people we've grown up with. You know, and since that dark June day last year, each of you has worked tirelessly to fight back. And the Dobbs decision, the court practically dared the women of America to be heard. This was the majority wrote. Women are not without electoral or political power. You ain't seen nothing yet, court. Oh, I really mean it. Think of the challenge that is. I said at the time that I didn't think the court, for that matter, the Republican Party, knew for decades have pushed their extreme agenda, have any clue about the power of women in America. I said they were about to find out. And by the way, in the midterms, when we were supposed to be blown out, they did find out. And they're going to find out again. I really believe it in my heart. I believe it. Look, we were criticized for making this an issue in the midterms. In fact, I got attacked for it. But you know, all along, what Kamala and Doug and Jill and I knew as well, the Americans would not stand by and let the court take away the right that's so fundamental. That we'd fight to restore these protections of Roe v. Wade and make it the law of the land once again, and we're going to do that. And we would let most personal decisions fall in the hands of politicians instead of women or doctors. The court was betting that all of us would remain silent. But my mother had an expression. She said, Joey, never bow, never bend, never yield. Just get up. Oh, you think I'm kidding. You didn't know my mom. That the women of America would remain silent was just beyond comprehension. that Kamala and I would remain silent. Well, we're not. We will not remain silent. And all over this country, thanks to the hard work of the voters, delivered a clear message. In Kansas, in Michigan, in Kentucky, in the polls in November, Americans voted to protect the woman's right to choose. In fact, you all showed up and beat the hell out of them. No. So what's really remarkable is despite the will of the American people, MAGA Republicans have made clear that they don't intend to stop with the Dobbs decision. No, they won't, until they get a national ban on abortion. Speaker McCarthy has said, quote, "Our work is far from done," end of quote. Senator Lindsey Graham wants to criminalize doctors and nurses who provide medical care for their patients. Make it a crime. Republicans in Congress have proposed 3 national abortion bans just this last year. Well, make no mistake about it. If somehow Congress were to pass a national ban, I will veto it. Let's also be clear that this decision also risks the broader rights of privacy for everyone. That's because the fundamental right to privacy, which Roe recognized, has served as a basis for so many other rights that are ingrained in our fabric of our country. The right to make the best decisions for your health. The right to use birth control. You ever think we'd be arguing about that? No, I'm serious. The right to marry the person you love. Judge Thomas said as much in his concurring opinion in Dobbs, writing, quote, "For that reason, the future cases we should reconsider all the court's substantive due process precedents, including Griswold, Lawrence, and Obergefell." These guys are serious, man. I said it when the decision came out, and people looked at me like I was exaggerating. But they're not stopping here. Make no mistake, this election is about freedom on the ballot once again. Look, we made so much progress. We can't let it take us backwards. I believe that one of the best ways to continue making progress is to ensure women are at every table where every decision is made. And that's not hyperbole. That's not hyperbole. I promised that my administration would look like America. My cabinet is the first majority female cabinet in history. You just heard from the first woman ever Vice President of the United States. And perhaps the most critical of milestones we mark tomorrow, we are reshaping our courts. We've appointed more black women to the Federal Circuit Courts of Appeal than every other president in American history combined. And of course, I was proud to keep my promise to appoint Justice Jackson, the first black woman in the Supreme Court. And by the way, she's smarter than the rest. I'm serious, she's incredible. She is genuinely incredible. We're also making progress building an economy where all Americans have the opportunity to work, raise a family, buy a home, start a business. We made historic investments in child care, making it more affordable so parents can work and provide for their kids at the same time. The first major piece of legislation I signed, the American Rescue Plan, provided historic tax relief for millions of families, helped to recover child care costs. We have the largest increase in history of child care tax credit, the dependent care child tax credit. We helped 200,000 children care providers stay open in small businesses, continuing to go through the pandemic and continue to serve more than 9.5 million children. These things matter. I signed legislation increasing funding for child care development block grants by 30%, helping low-income families afford child care. But there's so much more to do. And we're fighting over abortion. For example, the United States is still one of the only countries in the world that doesn't guarantee paid leave. I remain committed to changing that. And bringing us in line with every other single major economy in the world by passing a national program for paid leave and medical leave. We can get all this done and so much more. We can restore the protections of Roe v. Wade and make it the law of the land again. But we're going to need your help badly. So let me ask you this. Do you think your colleagues are with us? Well, I tell you what, they better damn well be. After the Dobbs decision came down, I signed 2 executive orders. My administration took a number of actions to protect the access to reproductive health care. And it's just the one I signed, the 3rd executive order, which is to strengthen the affordability of high-quality contraception. The idea that I had to do that, I mean, no, really, think about it. Think about it. I know I'm 198 years old, but all kidding aside, think about that. I never, ever thought I'd be signing an executive order protecting the right to contraception. But the only sure way to protect a woman's health and rights is for Congress to pass a law. As I said before, the court got Roe right 50 years ago. And I believe Congress should restore the protections of Roe v. Wade once and for all. But we need your help. So I'm asking again, are you with us? You're going to get this done? I really mean it. So let me close with this. Over the last week or so, we've seen extraordinary support from 3 of the most important voices in the country coming together to get behind this campaign. Organized labor, climate leaders, and all of you representing the powerful groups fighting to protect the advantage for women's rights. Your strong support, your determination, your advocacy are why I've never, I know I've said this before, and I want you to listen to it again. I mean it from the bottom of my heart. I have never been more optimistic about America's future than I am today. And with your help, Kamala and I are continuing to make the progress. We're going to finish this job. We just have to remember who the hell we are. We're the United States of America. And there's nothing beyond that if we work together. So God bless you all. May God protect our troops. Let's go get this done. Let's get it done. Thank you.